So again, my name is Christine Bennett. I'm the Community Education Manager with Epilepsy Foundation New England. And again, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. We have with us tonight the Maine CITE program, which is assistive technology, um, and they have it for all ages and all abilities. They are an organization that also um, their main community inclusion through technology is a statewide program helping people with disabilities increase their independence in all areas of life through assistive technology. So Melissa is an occupational therapist from Maine CITE, and she is also an assistive technology specialist. So I am excited to introduce her and have her take over. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thanks, Christine. Hi, everyone. I am Melissa, and I work for Maine CITE, which is our state's assistive technology program. We are going to talk about assistive technology, which I will call AT. But before we do that, I want to talk about the state programs, the state AT programs, because all 50 states and territories have programs like this. So I have a list in a couple of slides of the ones in New England, and we are federally funded by the Administration for Community Living, and in Maine, we're all run a little bit differently in Maine. We partner with the University of Maine at Augusta, UMA, to direct where the money goes and how it's used to carry out a continuum of specified activities, and that promote the ability of people with disabilities to know about, have access to, and ultimately be able to acquire the assistive devices and assistive technologies that they need. So as the lead agency in the state, we are responsible for providing and documenting information and assistance that we provide to people. And then we also do public awareness like this right here, this webinar. We do training, and most of that is in the form of webinars, which are always free. If you attend that, you can attend them live when they're presented. We do about 2 a month, and the rest of them are archived on our website, and I'll mention a couple of them as we go along. But I also will there is a handout, which we can probably put in the chat, but if not, Christine can email it to you. And it has all the websites I list, where to find the webinars, and some other resources. So then this slide has, as I said, the information referral, training, public awareness. The other thing we do, and all the state AT programs do, is that we have device lending and demonstration programs. So in Maine, we have about 12 to 1,500 devices in several locations that we have an online lending library. It's called atformaine.org. Every state's is a little bit different, but with us, people can borrow a device for a month, and so that they can try it before they buy it, or if they need it for a short-term accommodation, or if they simply want it for education purposes. We also do demonstrations. We have a couple of demonstration centers where you should call ahead and come and look at several devices that maybe accomplish the same thing, and then you can make an informed decision. The other thing our programs do is device reuse. So we recycle equipment and devices. So people will donate devices, then they're checked to make sure that they are still in workable condition and updated and clean, etc. And then some state programs provide those for free. And then others have, a small fee. So in Maine, we have one program that does that, and they do charge a little bit to keep their program running. So the agencies in Maine that we partner with are Spurwink Alltech, which is in Portland, and that is the one that has the reuse program. Pine Tree Societies in Bath, and they tend to be speech language pathology focused, but not exclusively. There is a nice lending library at UMaine in Farmington, so way out in the western foothills of Maine, and then Gallant Therapy Services, which is in the Augusta and Bangor area. And Maine CITE's center is in Augusta as well. So that leaves the whole top 2/3 of the state, the northern end of Maine, the crown of Maine, Aroostook County, and way down east, like Washington County, and Eastport and all that. So we do our very best to reach those programs as well. This is, I promised there would be a list of some resources. So these are the AT programs in the other New England states, and you can tell somewhat by their websites that they are run a little bit differently than Maine CITE because we're a .org. In Connecticut, it's the ConnecticutTechAct.com. I'm not sure who their lead agency is and who they're affiliated with. But for example, in Rhode Island and in Vermont, and I believe actually in Massachusetts as well, they partner with the vocational rehab, the Department of Labor. So that's where you would find their administrative or their lead agency people. And then in New Hampshire, their center is located at UNH, and they actually have all of these places have various centers around throughout the state so that they can reach all the consumers in the state. And then at the bottom of this page is the website for the AT3 Center, and that is that's the federal program that is that right? Well, it lists all of the state agencies, the state AT program. So if you go to any state or you have a relative that lives or a family member or a friend that lives in another state, you can say to them, you should contact your state AT program because it's this free service and we provide tons of information and it's really helpful. So now, I should mention who we serve. So we serve all ages and all abilities. So on this slide, we have a picture on the left of a little tot using a posterior walker. And then on the right, we have an older man using a standard walker. So you can see walkers are actually part of the AT universe. And I'll explain that in a little bit. But you can see that we really do. We work with preschools, schools, people transitioning from schools to work, people at work, the elderly, people with disabilities, people in all walks of life. And we also, there is assistive technology for all areas of life, right? So whether it's leisure or work or self-care, speech and language, there's AT for all of that. So now I'll move into what is assistive technology. So the way we define it is that it is any device or service that helps a person with a disability do something that would otherwise be difficult or impossible. So on the left is a picture of a very low-tech AT device. It's an elastic shoelace. So I might have elastic shoelaces because I find them convenient, but if you can't tie your shoes for one reason or the other, it's a piece of assistive technology. So very low tech. On the right, we have a picture of someone who appears to be seated in a very high-tech power wheelchair with a headrest, with chest harness, perhaps some other devices that help sustain him. And then he appears to be using a speech generating device. So that is a piece of AAC, which I will talk about in a little while. That's an augmentative and alternative communication device. And in this case, he probably isn't reaching up to that. He's probably either using a remote switch with maybe his hands or his elbows, or he could in fact be using eye gaze technology. So that's how high tech we get with this. And because we're federally funded, we do categorize the AT into 10 activity categories. And I am going to discuss examples of each of these categories. Most of us don't realize how broadly defined AT is. So for example, my supervisor said the other day, I have a reacher grabber at home to get the socks out from behind the dryer. But when I had my gallbladder out, I used it as an AT device because she couldn't reach for things and bend over. So that's just an example of like, that might be something that someone might need temporarily, and we are happy to help them with that. So we're going to start with aids for daily living. I'm an OT, so I call those ADLs, and that encompasses things like eating, bathing, toileting, dressing, those things you have to do every single day. Meal preparation, housekeeping, certainly medication management, might be yard work, and then we also consider sleep an ADL. So this would include devices like adapted eating utensils and grab bars and safety equipment in your bathroom for showering and taking care of your personal needs. Devices you would use if you, for example, had a hip replacement and you weren't supposed to bend at the waist. So it could be like a sock donner or a reacher grabber, that kind of thing. We also falling in this category is like adaptive clothing. So for somebody that uses a wheelchair, they may have something that's easy on and off or have different fasteners. That also would apply for adaptive clothing for, say, an individual with severe autism or other behavioral issues that don't keep their clothes on and they have to fasten in the back, that kind of thing. Um, there's a great website that I like to tell people about if they're looking at meal preparation adaptations. It's called the Blind Kitchen. And there are all sorts of devices that people who have low and no vision can use to still safely cook a full meal. And in this picture, we have in our AT for Maine library, we have quite a few options for pill medication management, pill boxes, pill cutters, that kind of thing. This picture is of a really pretty high-tech one. It can be loaded for 30 days. There's a timer, there's audio output, so it will sound a signal. It will actually tell you it's time to take your noontime pills. And that kind of thing. So it's really helpful for people who live alone and maybe either have some kind of visual or auditory um, um, limitation or perhaps cognitive limitation, some issues with memory. And then the next category we'll talk about is mobility. So you may not think about this as assistive technology, but it sure is. It's just a gigantic category that a lot of people use to be more independent. Our program just has a limited number of mobility devices in it. The lending program does, but our reuse program has many of them. So people will donate used wheelchairs, including power wheelchairs, canes, crutches, walkers, lifts, patient lifts, positioning devices, and that kind of thing. And then we restore them and get them back out into the community. Some states have a really robust programs for this. Like, so for example, in Massachusetts, there's a program called Re-Equipment, and they take in devices like power wheelchairs and get them all spiffed up, and they actually have seating clinics and that kind of thing. So that they have a really, really large volunteer community that helps with that. And then this picture on the screen is of someone using what looks like an ultra lightweight wheelchair that's customized particularly for his body. And he has it on a hydraulic lift that's going up into a van, an adapted vehicle. Adapted vehicles and lifts and ramps are a big problem in Maine because we don't have a designated program for that, but some of your states do. So and sometimes I will contact other states if somebody is really looking for something. So that's a whole vehicle modification is another category in the federal category. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The next category is vision. So I have several things pictured here. On the top left is a gadget it's a color identifier. So it looks like a little remote and you point it to something and it tells you it has something like 150 different shades of color that it can tell you in a nice clear voice. This is great. There's, I think, 15% of men actually have some level of red-green color blindness. So that's really important for people, but it's also important for people with low vision who can't really determine whether they have the same color socks on or not. So that's a nice popular item. And then the thing at the bottom, the picture at the bottom is of a digital magnifier. This one's called a Pebble. We have a number of them in our device lending library, as do the other states. And then there's all kinds of magnifiers for low vision. And then we also have, I don't want to forget to mention that most of us have assistive technology that we carry in our pockets all the time in the manner of a cell phone. So there are built-in, especially in iPhones, there are built-in apps that automatically come with your iPhone, and you can go to the accessibility features and adjust the visual contrast and the size of the font, and you can limit background so that if you have low vision or some other vision issue, it's better for you. You can also use, of course, speech to text, text to speech, that kind of thing. So I encourage you to explore your own devices for that. Androids are great too, but sometimes you have to download an app on that, but they have some good features as well. Hearing loss is the #1 disability worldwide. So we do have some devices for that. And we also, in our information and referral capacity, we will refer people to others who know a lot about hard of hearing and deafness. And certainly the telecommunications program in Maine. So every state also has, adapted telephones and things like that that are available to the deaf community. But we do have some gadgets. So this one on the upper left is, for example, a pocket talker. So this is a personal voice. It's a voice amplifier. So in this case, someone would wear the headset, the person who's hard of hearing, and then there's another little pocket amplifier that you can either clip to yourself so that you're talking to people and you can hear them better, or you can set it on the table if you're having dinner with someone. I wish I'd known about this when I used to take my dad out to dinner because he really couldn't hear what I was talking about, and this would have been perfect for him because he really couldn't wear hearing aids. And then on the right, the top right picture is an over-the-counter hearing aid, which definitely has its place in the world. We have a webinar archived on our website, Over-the-Counter versus Prescription Hearing Aids, which was given right when the over-the-counter hearing aids became a thing. So that those technologies develop so fast. We do always recommend if somebody has actual hearing loss that they get evaluated by an audiologist so that they know what the device is right for them. But we do have those devices. We also have a Roger neck loop. That's the thing at the picture on the bottom left. That's where you wear this thing around your neck, and there's a tabletop microphone, and it can help you hear it compare with your hearing aids even, so that if you're in a crowded room, you can isolate that noise. And then the lower right is a brand new product. It is called a ear acoustic headphone. It's just come on the market. It's over the counter. It only costs about $20, and we haven't really tested it out yet. But it's supposedly really great for watching TV. You know, if you have a family member who has to have the volume jacked up so high that nobody can hear themselves think, it is supposed to direct the sound more to your ears, and really help with that. But again, we haven't tested it, but that's how new some of the technology we have is. I should mention that some of it has been around for a long time, you know, years and years, and it's still current and great. And then other technology develops so fast that things become obsolete, as you know, like with computers sometimes can become obsolete within years. Sometimes it's months. So we do try to keep up on that and update our inventories all the time, and other states do as well. So this category, I'm going to spend a little more time on because this is what many of us consider assistive technology, but it's for speech and communication. Um, we have some simple devices like, again, amplifiers. The device on the top is called an Advox, and that is a speaker a speaker and amplifier, and then a headset with a mouthpiece. So I wore one of these when I went to this big event where there were 800 people, I think, a tabling event where people were going to look, you know, around the room, and they'd come by and I had it on and I'd talk to them. I'd say, why can I hear you and I can't hear anybody else? And it's because my voice was coming out of this amplifier. So this is really great for like meetings, like if you have a meeting of, you know, you're in a group meeting where there's maybe not great acoustics and you need to project your voice a little better. Professors will wear this if they're lecturing, that kind of thing, but it can also help on a personal level as well. And then the device at the bottom is called um, it's a pain rating scale. So you can take different icons. One's for pain. It might be that you feel dizzy or you have nausea or you need your medicine or you need to see a doctor. And you can put it on here so that if you're in the hospital, you're with a nurse or whatever, or your caregiver, and you have no voice for some reason, you can convey what you mean and the severity. So like on the top there, the green would be, I'm feeling a little bit of a headache. But then way off to the right is I have severe pain and I need some help. So we do a whole trainings on communication. I did one recently on intro to communication to some educational technicians in Maine and Massachusetts. They're called paraprofessionals. They're the teaching assistants in schools that work directly with the children who have disabilities or have IEPs and 504 plans. And what we do is we start explaining why we communicate. Um, it's a basic human need, communication is, and it also is a right that we have. So if you don't have verbal speech, or you can't use sign language, or you can't write what you need to say, we find ways so that you can communicate. So for example, we don't want anyone to not be able to provide consent, right? You need to be able to say yes or no, at least at the very most basic level. And there is a hierarchy of communication. So newborns they communicate without intending to, right? If they're hungry or they are colicky or they have a wet diaper, they're going to fuss and cry. They're not doing it on purpose to let us know. It's just what they do. But we know that that there's something that they're trying that is unpleasant for them. Eventually, they will develop intentional communication, which they want you to know what they're trying to convey, but it may not be conventional, right? It might be pounding a spoon on their tray or having a temper tantrum or whatever it is. And they don't really have the words to express themselves or then they move into conventional communication. And so this is socially acceptable gestures like pointing, nodding, hugging, and that is when speech starts developing. So all of these levels, there are actually 7 levels of communication. They can all be mapped out by knowledgeable people. Usually it's a speech language pathologist, but it can be other people who are trained. And if someone is either not as a child developing conventional communication or as an adult has lost the ability to use it, then we have the tools we need to figure out what level they're at so that we can start them with communication devices. So we start with systems that use concrete symbols. So the objects have a one-to-one relationship with what they represent. So in this picture, we have these cards that have actual objects on them, like a pair of socks or a book. So that child might be able to indicate by touching the book that that's what they want you to do, is to read to them, or that they're hungry and they touch a spoon. And so this is the very basic, the beginning of using a communication device. It can move into then abstract symbols. So many of you are familiar with PEC. Maybe you've seen a PEC system, picture exchange system, where there are little pictures or icons, and there's a Velcro book, and the child uses or the person uses those pictures to communicate. So I would like to point out, though, that abstract symbols don't just include pictures, but sign language is an abstract symbol, right? The sign isn't the actual thing. Braille is an abstract symbol. Written words are abstract symbols. So if people in the audience know how to write, you know that if you write the word moon, it doesn't look like the moon. It's abstract. And speech is also abstract. So we know that once we start with that, then we can help the person get on the road for having, having more communication. So, and these pictures here are, for example, you'll see, this is from a particular program. I think it's Lamp Words for Life. I'm not sure, there are a number of them. But if you look at it, you see the I there and it says look. It doesn't mean I, it means look. So there's a learning component with it. And then people will learn categories and it gets quicker and quicker. So with any system like this, placement of the symbols in the communication device is very important because we memorize where they are. The other day, I deleted an app on my phone and I could not find my weather app to save my life. It moved to a different page and it was so frustrating. So it's probably a lot of you have had that where you misplace something just a little bit and you have to relearn where it is. So and when a person is learning with a new device, it is learning a whole new language. So it takes a long time and a lot of communication partners to help people. And then, so once people get good at using symbols and that kind of thing, then they can start using 2- and 3-word sentences and building on that. So a lot of times it starts with I want sentences, but we'd like that to develop so it can become more socially appropriate speech. If someone is working with a speech therapist that is not versed in AAC and they really need to be using a device, then it's appropriate to ask for an assistive technology professional or another therapist that has that experience so that you get the right match. Oops. I'm going to talk a little bit about different displays. So we talked a little bit about the PEC system. That's really low tech, where you have these Velcro pieces that go on a Velcro board. These are static displays. So these are the GoTalk system. If you look at the right-hand picture, you can see that they can come in with 1 display, 2 displays, 4 displays, all the way up to the one here that has 32. And with these, what you see is what you get. So what happens is you load a template with some symbols on it into, I say load, it's a slip of paper that slips into the top of it. And then there is a record button. And so a communication partner, in other words, like the mom or dad or a teacher or a friend or the grandma or whatever, can program each one of those cells with their own voice. So if they have a speaking voice, they can do that. So you would hit the record button, hit the number 1 and say 1, and so on. And then there are different levels on it, meaning that you can put a different template in, go to level 2. And so those templates can represent different things. So this one might be for, say, math. You would have one for meals, you could have one for personal care, you could have one for the subjects in school. Now, once it's determined that a user is proficient at this, then they can go on to a dynamic display. So these are high-tech devices. They can either be an iPad, like on the left, that has Proloquo to go loaded onto it. It's an app. Or it can be a dedicated speech generating device, like the device on the right, which I think might be a Tobii Dynavox, I'm not sure. But these have layers so that you can pick a category and then you get a page, then you can pick another subcategory and pick another page, and people get really fast at it. You really do need to work with, as your language is developing, that person will work with a speech language pathologist. And so that you can appropriately move up in levels. And I just want to say the advantage to using like an iPad with an app is that they are updatable. The software is automatically updates. But that I'm not saying that's better than using like a dedicated speech generating device, because those are fantastic and they are matched for people. They're very sturdy. They are not there. You don't have the capable of using the internet. It is totally dedicated to the use of language. So that's an advantage in some cases. Getting learning to know what kind of device a person needs takes a lot of trial and error. It's a big job. It takes the schools a really long time sometimes to fit devices to people. But once you get it done, it completely changes people's worlds, people that can't use verbal or signed or gestured speech. So we have some of these devices in our lending library. Some of the other states have more, but we also keep track of all the people in the state that work in Maine that can do assessments for people for AAC. And we have waiting lists sometimes of like 12 months. So it's definitely a much needed assistive technology category. And then just to sort of wrap up that topic, finding your voice. So here's a little girl who doesn't have spoken verbal speech, and she's able to communicate using the AAC. So that's really what it's all about. So now we're going to go on to another category, which is learning, cognition, and development. Some of you may have seen gadgets like this for, say, time management. So the picture on the left is, for example, a display that you might use with someone, say, with memory concerns or orientation concerns. So, it can, in the morning, it'll say, now it's Saturday morning. You can program it to say different things and do the time and date and that kind of thing. We have AT for reading. On the right is a reading pen. There are a lot of different models of those. And that would be great for somebody that has, say, a reading disability, or for some reason just can't follow along to, say, a lecture, or has to read and retain the information and review it. So you can scan the text with a pen and it's recorded and it can speak back to you. You can wear it with a headset so that if you're doing reading in a library or in a classroom, it's a way for you to take in the content that everybody else is taking in also. We have, AT for measuring. We have some for memory loss, writing and spelling. And then there are a lot of apps out there that are also assistive technology apps that are used for things like concentration and memory. The device on the lower right, I don't know if anybody's ever seen a time timer. These are visual timers. This one is a little timer that's embedded in a dry erase board. And so it has a 60-minute timer on it. So you turn it and it turns red. So say in this case, you had 45 minutes to do 3 things. You could jot down the 3 things on the dry erase board and then set the timer for 45 minutes. And that way you're not constantly looking at your phone or your smartwatch or whatever, or you're not saying what time it is. You've got this timer in front of you and it's helping you manage your time. It works great for a lot of teachers use those, but I know people at work will do it as well. And then I've heard of parents doing it in the morning and saying, okay, you have 15 minutes to brush your teeth and put your shoes on. Who hasn't been through that, right? Who has kids? My goodness. And again, don't forget those accessibility features on your iPhones and your Androids. Now we're going to talk about environmental adaptations. So this can be something simple like an adaptive switch, lots of smart home devices. Some of you may have those and use them for convenience, but they can also be assistive technology. For example, for somebody, I know someone who has very low vision and she'll, ask Alexa, what's the weather out today? Or how many miles away is such and such? How long will it take me to get to, the University of Maine at Augusta? And then also we have, we do a lot with fall and safety alerts. So we do whole trainings on adaptive switch access. And then we have a lot of devices for alternative controls for things like wheelchairs and computers and that kind of thing. The picture here on the right is of a person who is using a lot of adaptive controls to use a computer. So he's in a wheelchair with that he has full support with. He may or may not be able to use his hands to control a mouse or a clicker. So it does look like he's using a sip and puff mechanism, which is a device cursor and a mouse that is controlled with different mouth movements and pressure from your mouth. He also has a chin switch there mounted there, and then there's another toggle switch off to the side. So he is accessing his environment and that computer by using that, and he can, for that reason, he could probably open the door to his apartment, unlock and lock it, maybe turn the heat on, open and close curtains and blinds with an automatic gadget on the curtain rod. So there's all kinds of independence that can be had using this type of assistive technology. I said earlier, there's a whole category for vehicle modifications in some states. There's really great programs for that, AT programs that have those devices for people. In Maine, we don't necessarily, but we do have little gadgets like this, like an easy reach seat belt grabber. We also have the thing in the middle is called an auto cane or if they have other names, but if you can see, the guy in the cane is using in the car has this hooked into the latch on his door, and it acts as a grab bar so that like if you had sore knees or you had balance issues, you could use it to push up and get back down onto the seat. So for transfers. And then there are different kinds of steering wheels. So if you had arthritis or you had tremors or something and you needed to soften those, you could use a gadget like that. The next category I'm going to talk about is huge, but we only have a limited amount of time, so I'm just going to go over it briefly. But we have a lot of technology for sensory needs. This can be really simple things like different types of lighting, um, white noise machines. We have things like fluorescent light covers, soothing lighting. There's also a lot of stimulating lighting, which I will say you have to be very careful with because they can, for many people, they don't do well with flashing lights, etc. So we do note that in our inventory. We have things like weighted blankets and vests and compression sheets, so that if you need that deep pressure to relax and stay focused, we have those. We also have a lot of things cushions and toys that vibrate. We have a cool device. It's a blackout sensory tent. So it looks like a phone booth that's made out of blackout material. You go inside and zip it down, and it is really dark in there. And there are a lot of people that find that to be a great environment for timeout. Not just children, but adults as well. So these are all things that are available to borrow. And we encourage people, like we'll have teachers that will borrow a few devices from us to use with students. And then there are people that are in the workforce that sometimes need things like that to focus on their job. And of course, if you think about people with dementia, sometimes they just need something to hold and feel comforted by. So we have devices for that as well. I didn't mention some of the alternative seating devices we have. We have, wiggle seats, there are ball chairs, there are, different cushions and that kind of thing. So that's also in the sensory library and the seating and positioning section as well. And then yet another really big category is computer access and adaptations, which is what most people think of when they think of assistive technology. The picture on the upper left is an alternative keyboard. This one is for perhaps low vision because it has very high contrast with yellow keys. And there are also big keys that make clicking noises so that if you have low vision, you have more of an idea of what you're doing rather than like a flat keyboard that a lot of us favor at this point. We have a variety of mice. We have ones that are controlled with your mouth. We have a head mouse. There are different alternative mice, or there are mice that you can use with your feet. The picture on the lower left is of a Skyle. That is a gadget that goes on just under your screen, and you calibrate it to your eye movement, and you can use eye gaze to control the cursor and the mouse on your screen. So this is technology it's developed a lot in the past years. This one was just purchased last year. I couldn't get it to calibrate, but I didn't try for very long. But it is slower. It's never going to be the same as using, a keyboard and a mouse, but it opens up doors for people that if all they have is eye movement, then they can even play a simple video game or just communicate single words. It's really great. And then the picture on the right is just a variety of different kinds of switches we have that can be plugged in. They usually have 8-inch jacks, and they can be plugged into a device that has that type of jack. So like, for example, or you can plug those into a hub and then plug an appliance into the hub. So if you have a fan that you like to turn on and off, but you can't turn the fan on and off physically, then you could plug it into a link switch or a different kind of hub, and then have just a simple button switch right by your chair, and you can turn the fan on and off that way. And then Oh, we're getting close. Good. I'm doing okay. Am I doing okay time-wise? Okay. So this is recreation and leisure. We don't want to forget this. This picture on the left is this fantastic new feature we have at Maine CITE. This is our adaptive garden called the Better Together Garden. And it has a variety of raised beds. And there are Moby mats. These are these mats on the grass you can see so that if you have a wheelchair or a walker, you can get to the garden. And it's also a sensory garden. So there are things to taste, there are things to smell, there are things to hear, and there are things to feel. It's been just a really fun thing to have. We're hoping it was, we had a few visitors this year, but we're hoping that we will get more visitors there, have different groups of people come to access it. And we have a lot of adapted gardening equipment, really long-handled things and different seating and that kind of thing. And very lightweight, like things like if you have arthritis and you love to garden, but you can't use your snips, we have these ones that are spring-loaded that I absolutely love. There's simple things like low-tech device, a card holder if you only have one hand, or if you have tremors, or you don't have sensation in your hand, and you can't hold a big display of cards, that can be helpful. And then another category is adaptive sports and recreation equipment like this hand cycle. Uh, Maine has historically not had a lot of those things in our inventory, but we do have one program called Pine Tree Society that has a beautiful camp in Rome, Maine, for people of all ages and all abilities. And they just got a lot of devices like floating beach wheelchairs and different cycles, different kinds of bicycles and trikes, and different water sports devices like adapted kayaks and things like that. And they're hoping soon to make that available to more people in Maine. In New Hampshire, some of you may have heard of UNH's program Northeast Passage, which is they have a huge inventory of really great adaptive skiing and adaptive bicycles. And you can sign up for classes there or courses, or you can rent for pretty low cost devices that cost lots and lots of money, so that you can take them on vacation or just be able to use them for recreation. So the one last slide I have is about our online lending library, so that if you are in Maine or you work in Maine or you know someone who lives in Maine, they can go to atformaine.org. And I want to point out that this website looks like it is the Maine CITE website because of that big logo. But if you look up in the search bar, you'll see that it's AT for Maine. And anybody can go on this. All of you can check it out. And one of the easiest ways to find things is to go scroll down on this page, and it'll say find items by category. So you can look at things that you might be interested in. And you'll see there are lots of different devices. There are some filters. You can filter by program, you can filter by category, or you can enter a keyword, but that's a little bit tricky because if you, for example, you put in um, um, something that has the word light in it, every single device that has light in the title or the description will pop up. So be careful with that. If somebody wants to borrow something, they do have to log in and create an account. It's very simple information, basic information like your name, address, a phone number, and email, so that we can keep track of all our inventory, which is purchased with our grant. And that is true of the other state programs as well. And you can go on their website. We'll make sure that you have the information to find those websites, and you call them. I encourage people to call if they have questions, or email, because that's what we're here for. I get paid to answer questions, and I love it. I really do love my job. I love being an occupational therapist, but a lot of you know a lot about healthcare anymore, and there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, and I feel like I could do a lot of really great work in the seat I sit in here at Maine CITE. So This is our basic contact information. But I am happy to, if there are any questions or comments, I'm happy to answer them in the few minutes that we have left. Is there a chat? Oops. Went back.
There is a chat, but there's no questions just
No
yet.
questions. Okay.
No questions. You're doing great. I do have one though.
Okay.
So, one of the things that you have posted about, which was very interesting, and I think would be really helpful for the families that we work with, are definitely those memory aids
Yeah.
that you had posted about. Um, Now, if one of the things that we do work with families is they do struggle with remembering to take their medications and all those things. Um,
Right.
and if we had a client that or a family member that we were working with and they would like to have some of these, is that something that we would be able to have them reach out for you guys and they would be able to get something like that medication reminder that you had before with like the clock on it was great because it's a great visual
Yeah.
and having it there because a lot of
Oh,
the
I'm in the wrong.
time,
Am I in the wrong here? Oh,
no, no,
that is that pillbox. Yeah.
yeah, that was
Um,
fabulous.
Well, we do have those in our inventory. We have, this one is really the biggest one we have. We have others that aren't so much, but they're, in Maine, yes. So if you live in Maine, the problem with the programs is that they're state specific because we each get grant monies. Um, so if they live in Maine or somebody works in Maine, they can borrow our devices and use them for 30 days to trial. And then if it is the right thing, then we will help direct people to funding or finding a used device and that kind of thing. But I am quite sure that the other state AT programs will have medication management devices as well. So yes, the answer is yes. And that you could also find if there's a location near you that has them available, you can come. I always encourage people to make an appointment, even though we say we're open to the public. We all are doing busy things all the time, to make sure that there's somebody that knows what they're talking about there when you go to visit. So you could say, I would like you to demonstrate some medication management devices for me, and make an appointment and go see them and check them out in person. That's what they're there for. And I will say too, we document all that because we get kudos.
Yeah.
When we do loans and we do demonstrations and public awareness, we document everything we do because the feds want to know that we're using the grant money appropriately to help people. So please don't hesitate to call your local AT program. And all of us, so not all of the centers are sort of are public facing. We have two that are in therapy clinics, and so that's sort of like they have closets of stuff and they bring them out to the lobby and you can take them home. But if you came to Maine CITE, or if you wanted to go, if you're closer to Portland and you wanted to visit Darren at Spurwink Alltech and you wanted to see medication management devices that he doesn't have in his library, let us know, give us some time, and we can get those devices to Darren and he can demonstrate them to you.
And then also, one of the things I know that's helped us with our daughter is programs in school. So if do schools work with the different AT programs in each state? So if I have, let's say I was living in Massachusetts and my daughter was in Massachusetts, and I know that there could be specific programs because she has learning disabilities that could help her. Would the school be able to reach out to you, or could I reach out to, as a parent or even a community health worker, reach out to the AT program that's in each state and ask them to help maybe collaborate or get an evaluation for technology
Okay.
assistance for that child?
So that's a great question. And I don't have specifics about Massachusetts, but what we do in Maine is First of all, we're doing a ton of outreach because Maine CITE's been in existence for a long time. And there are huge, huge swaths of the state that don't even know that we exist. So I'm presenting to a whole group of speech language pathologists next month. And from a lot of different districts. But in Massachusetts, what happens is, like, say, if you think, say, for example, your daughter could benefit from some of this assistive technology, you can ask the OT or the SLP at the school. You can see if you can get a prescription for an assessment. And then if the therapist isn't knowledgeable, because that can happen, they maybe didn't get a lot of AT training, right? That happens all the time. And really, it's sometimes no fault of their own. It's just the program they went to or the place they live in the world doesn't know about it. Then you can contact Mass Match and say, can you help me find resources for an AT assessment? And then see if the school will do that. And they should. And if that doesn't work, then educate yourself, get the therapist to educate themselves on different technologies, maybe do a field trip to one of the centers. And in our state, we do have like a 12-month waiting list for some school districts for AAC assessments and AT assessments. A lot of the AT professionals, so there's actually a certification, the ATP, AT professional. I don't have mine yet, but I'll sit for it someday before I retire. But I could do an AT assessment. I know enough. I'm an OT and I can do them. There are lots of people who can do them, and a lot of them are being done remotely now, partly because of geography, and partly because of the tiny number of people that are really, really skilled in Maine. In Massachusetts, I think you've got a lot more to choose from, probably.
And like one of the simpler things like that my daughter was able to get is so in her district all the kids get iPads,
Yep,
but she all the kids get iPads and they have iPads.
iPads. Yeah,
But she also needed a laptop. So for her assistive technology, she was able to also get a laptop with her iPad from the school district. And on the laptop are programs that they've purchased. And she went through a technology assessment for that reason in order to find programs on her laptop the school provides, and they have to pay for it. The school provided it
right.
and looked for programs. And that assessment allowed her to find programs that helped her to be able to be equal to her peers. So that way, when she's in class, there's programs that would change the reading level. Like I was talking to Melissa about that before, of some of the reading that she would have to do. Or if she had to write something, she could literally had a program where it would like, she would put in like a topic and it would come up with like a few words to help kind of get her going. And
Yeah.
those kind of things. So those are all part of her IEP. But the great thing is when I talk to people is that when she graduates high school, that IEP goes away. But
Yes.
but when she goes to college or she goes to community college or even work, those pieces of technology can follow her and those can be part of her accommodations.
Great.
So even though that IEP is gone, those accommodations of those pieces of technology that we know help her, excuse me, that help her will then go ahead and follow her as she grows. So these are pieces that we know that she will be able to use and utilize the rest of her life, which are huge. So that's why I can't talk enough, Melissa, about this program and how important it is because our kids are going off to college and then they don't have their IEP to kind of give them that safety net. But these pieces that you are so wonderful with and talking about are allowing these kids to have the same playing field as their
You're
peers.
right.
How
Right.
wonderful is that? Like that's huge.
That
So
you have a really great story, Christine, because that I think the transition planning is supposed to start in middle school.
it is. Yeah. It's supposed to
And
start at the age of 14, I believe.
yeah, yeah. And I am not the expert on that. Jesse, our director, knows a lot more about it, but there's also I think I can't remember whether it was called a letter from like the Department of Education that noted that AT is not like something you just should maybe think about. It's required.
No, it should
So
be, yes.
there is some great information about that out there. The other thing is that, and I know this is in Maine, I don't know what's happening, but they're starting to go, some of the the Medicaid waivers, they're trying to do the lifespan waiver so that that's going to eliminate some of that the gap between school age and adult, because there is a big gap. Sometimes people just poof,
Yep.
just goes away. So we're there. I can't really speak astutely about that, but if you are interested in that, we can email and I'll get you some information that you can act. If we have a webinar, we might even be doing a webinar on it. But you know, that's something you guys can watch our webinars.
Oh,
Anybody in the,
yes, and we'll post them to our social media too, Melissa. We're
okay,
happy to
great.
share those with our families because, you know, the work that you guys, that you are doing, the work we are doing, you know, we're kind of all in the same kind of group helping our families. So, so important that we're constantly communicating and keeping this relationship going because really it's helpful. And can't say thank you enough for being here tonight. Um, with everything. And I'm hoping that this helps others ask questions and opens up new possibilities for either for themselves or for the families that they're working with. But I can't say, I think when people hear assistive technology, they don't realize what that actually includes. And that, because I think when they think assistive technology, they automatically think of the person in the wheelchair with the pieces or that, and that's all it
Right,
is.
right.
Or the, you know, the PEC system, where there's so many more pieces to it and helps so much. So I'm so glad you were here tonight, Melissa, to hopefully widen our education on such amazing, helpful, useful, life-changing pieces that really can level that playing field. So that's why I say all the time, it just levels it.
Right.
Um,
All
and let us
those
know what you think.
invisible disabilities, right?
Yes, so much so. Yes.
There's a what one of the webinars you should watch is the AT for mental health. It's fabulous.
Oh, I will.
Wonderful
I'll
practitioner
post it.
here in Maine. You know, apps for calming and concentration and all that stuff. So
I
it's
will
really
go ahead and I will actually add that to the link to everybody. I'll send out an email after today with the recording. And then also some of the things that Melissa just talked about, I'll add those links in there too. So we have all of that. So thank you so much, everybody, for being with us tonight. I so appreciate that you were here for this webinar and have a lovely night. Don't forget that our next webinar is going to be October 9th, and it's going to be autism and epilepsy with Dr. Katanis from Hasbro Children's Hospital. So thank you so much.
thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.